What the frick is up, YouTube? Sorry for that kind of botched intro. Adjusting this as we speak, but thought I would record a little something, a little walk and talk. I think actually the first walk and talk in New York City since we've returned from Barcelona. I was thinking maybe leaving that behind in Europe, but why not continue the freaking legacy? Simply enough, this video is about how, well, actually, not how, my simple rule for maintaining high voluminous meals and staying full no matter where you are in your diet journey. It doesn't matter if you're bulking, you're cutting, if you're maintaining. This is the rule that I try to stand by all the freaking time. What is it? Quite simply, it is this. I call it the golden ratio of weight to calories. And what it is I try for all my food to make it so that nothing has more calories than its gram weight. No meal has more calories than its gram weight. How does this look? I'm going to split this into two different areas. One is simple and one is complicated. Simply, about the simplest that it freaking gets. Let's say you're making good old, one of my favorite staples, good old potatoes and fish. I might make a whole video on this, but really it's the russet potatoes, man. Take some russet potatoes, throw them in the microwave, give them 6 minutes, bam. You have one of the creamiest, best tasting potatoes ever. Super high voluminous food. Everyone knows that about potatoes, right? But what makes it so voluminous? Well, if you do the actual calculations, let's say 500 grams of potatoes, 100 gram of potato of raw, right, is about 77 grams freaking, or 77 calories, per 100 grams, right? So if I have 500 grams, multiply 77 by 500, or by 5 rather, right, you're looking at 350, 385. 385 calories for 500 grams of raw potatoes, right? So if you can find a cooking method for potatoes that maintains as much weight as possible, man, you're going to end up with a ratio that is killer, right? We're talking like basically 1.3 weight to calories, right? That's brutal. That's awesome. And so, in that case, man, if I told you to eat a pound, 545 grams, 454 grams, got that backwards, of potatoes, you don't need to be consuming like 300 calories, right? It's a pound of damn food. And so, when you microwave a potato, you lose about 10%. Doesn't matter. 500 turns into 450, you're still above the 385 freaking calories or so, right? That constitute that 500 grams raw. So that's a very high voluminous food, and that's why potatoes are so freaking satiating. That's why everyone's always like, eat your potatoes on your cut. Maybe switch out rice for potatoes. There's a reason, right? That is the freaking reason, definitively, because they're so high in weight compared to their caloric content. All right, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's say maybe I'm having potatoes, but I'm also having that with some like fattier meats. Well, an egg is normally 50 grams uncooked. It's going to lose a bit when you cook it, and it has about 70 calories. So that's a bit, under that golden ratio, not quite where we want it. Assuming a full egg, obviously with the yolk and everything. But like we just said, potatoes are well above. So if I pair like 454 grams of potatoes, 300 calories, with like 5 eggs, which is like 350 calories, but for 250 grams, well, all of a sudden you're looking at gram weight 450 plus 250, so 700. But then calorie wise, you're looking at 300 plus 350, so 650. So 700 grams, like 650 freaking calories. Man, you're still in that golden ratio range, right? Despite having fattier eggs, well, you balance it out with the potatoes. Bam. Now let's get into some more complicated scenarios. I love pancakes. If you watched any of my other videos my past week or so, every freaking day has been some form of pancakes in the intro. I'm obsessed, trying to perfect the freaking recipe, and that's half of what I'm thinking about, half of the time. But pancakes aren't exactly the freaking most voluminous food for the calories, right? Traditionally. However, if you use this metric as a guiding freaking, lodestone in your recipe creation, you can kind of mitigate some of those bad qualities or whatever, less ideal qualities for your goals in, let's say, pancakes, right? Let's say normally pancake batter is about 300 grams for, 600 calories. Well, if you cut out all the fat, that's going to be the majority of the calories. You can probably get that down to like, 4 or like 300 grams for like 350, maybe 400 calories. Well, then what? Maybe the batter's kind of thick. Put a little bit extra water, put a bit extra low-fat milk in the batter, which traditionally, like 240 grams of almond milk is only about, unsweetened vanilla, 30 calories, right? So that's a freaking excellent ratio, right? That's why they say on a cut, drink more water, drink a lot of water. 0 calories, a lot of volume, right? So, it's about staying full. So if you take a recipe and modify it to simply like add more hydration, add more liquid, add more things that are very, very good on that scale of grams to calories, and reduce whatever is bad on that scale of grams to calories. Traditionally, generally, 90% of the time, fats are going to be the culprit because fats are the densest, the least amount of grams, least amount of weight per calorie out of any of the other macronutrients, right? It's 9 calories per gram. Carbs and proteins are both 4. And so by switching out fats for low-calorie liquids, it's your best freaking bet. Really easy way to do that is to switch out, for example, eggs, full eggs, and butter in pancake recipes, and oil for just egg whites. Usually the egg whites can add the necessary moisture, hydration, emulsification properties without all the unnecessary fats. You can usually cut out like an easy 200, 300 calories just by switching out freaking egg whites for all that stuff I just listed. All right, video a bit longer than I thought it would be, but that's basically the synopsis. So TLDR, to sum it up, golden rule, calories to gram. You want to maintain anything above a 1 calorie, 2 gram, anything above a 1 gram, 2 calorie ratio, right? So 2 grams to calorie, amazing. I mean, that's kind of tough to get, but let's say oatmeal is a great example. 80 grams of uncooked oatmeal is 300 calories. Man, I could easily fit into 80 grams, 600 grams of water. And I'll make a video on that because there's a method that I don't think anyone else is really talking about, but developed it recently. It involves a blender, I'll leave it at that. But, 680 grams of oatmeal, maybe it reduces to 600 after freaking microwaving the shit out of that, but that's still 600 grams for 300 calories. That's a 2-to-1 gram to protein or gram to calorie ratio. That is perfect. That's awesome. That's about as far to the golden zone as you can get before things get loco. Before you just put in like stevia into a thing of gelatinous jello, unsweetened, unflavored jello, which some people do, but it's kind of pushing it. So, anyways, try to stay above that 1 gram to calorie ratio. Push it as far as you can, especially if you're cutting. If you're bulking, maintaining, staying at 1-to-1 is still good. If you're bulking really hard, I mean, maybe just go below. Maybe put some peanut butter, maybe some like drizzled on your oatmeal or something. You don't always have to go under, but if you're someone that has an easy time gaining, a hard time losing, it's a great ratio. And I think most people in the fitness space are trying to lose weight, at least lose fat and gain muscle. This is great for both of those freaking ideals because the less calories you get from fats and these high density liquids, the more you can put into protein, which you don't need a ton of, but the more you can put into carbs, which is really freaking important. And that'll ramp up your metabolism, do a whole bunch of good stuff. So keep that in mind. Even if you're not trying to simply slim down or whatever, it's still a good tenet to try and follow. So that said, nothing much more to say. Catch you guys all for the next freaking video. Stay lean, stay huge, stay hungry. Jaden out.